My name is Ali, I'm a doctor and YouTuber.
I'm Taymor, I'm a data scientist and writer.
And you're listening to Not Overthinking,
the weekly podcast where we think about happiness, creativity and the human condition. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Not Overthinking. Ali, what's going on?
I'm just in the middle of eating some sushi that I just ordered.
Ah, a bit of the old sushi o tabimasu.
Exactly. Sushi got ski des. I think I should say suki desu.
Yeah, I think that's the authentic pronunciation.
Yeah, suki desu. Sushi ga suki desu. No, I've just been live streaming for the last 5 hours while being productive on my day off work in social distancing, isolation and stuff because, not allowed to leave the house anymore.
Oh yeah, so how are you guys handling all that? Because you still have to go to work, right?
Yes. So basically going to work and then just not having any social contact outside of work.
So just same as usual then.
Exactly. Except now even Molly's keeping a distance from me, so same as usual.
Nice. That was good. Yeah, same. I came back to St. Albans a few days ago and I'm quarantining myself here for the foreseeable future.
It kind of sucks that you spend all that money on that flat in London.
I know, yeah, it's annoying.
And then literally a month later, suddenly everyone's in lockdown.
Nah, it's more like 2 months. Lucas and his girlfriend are still living there, so they're getting some good mileage out of it.
So someone's getting value out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this week we should talk about the current affairs. Yeah.
Current affairs. We're talking about current affairs? What? Okay, fine. Yeah. Let's talk about current affairs. But before we do so, what's the message we have to share with everyone?
The message is for everyone to please stay home. And not only that, stay home and try a class on Skillshare. Skillshare is the best way to teach yourself anything online.
Keep going. I'm eating my sushi.
All right. Have you ever wondered, man, why didn't I ever learn screenwriting? Or, man, I'd really like to learn comedy. Or, I'd really like to understand economics. These are all things that I've wondered over the years. And Skillshare can actually help you with all of these things. Look, we're all quarantined now. We're all holed up. This is a perfect time to try picking up a new hobby, learning a new thing that you've always wanted to learn. And Skillshare is a great way to do it. Amongst the Netflixing and having, rude video calls with your friends, I think everyone would benefit from a cheeky Skillshare class.
I think so. So Skillshare.com/notoverthinking for a 2-month free trial. If all this stuff blows over in 2 months, then great, you've got your 2-month free trial. And after that, the annual subscription is less than $10 a month. And with that, you get access to thousands of classes on Skillshare. In fact, did you know, Taymor, I've got my own second Skillshare class coming out on the 31st of March.
I can't wait. So, what is it?
Yeah, it's called How to Study for Exams. Evidence-based revision tips or something like that. I feel like I need a catchier title for it, but it's 35 videos. It's 4.5 hours worth of content. So even though lots of people's exams are cancelled, that means, they can be self-motivated to study for their exams by watching my Skillshare class in about 10 days time.
Yeah, the
classes, yeah.
The exam cancellation's kind of thrown a spanner in the works for you, hasn't it?
Has it?
I don't know, who's going to buy this course right now?
They have to buy it because it's on Skillshare. So with just one subscription, they can get access to it for free. And if they go to Skillshare.com/notoverthinking, they can get a free 2-month trial. And therefore the class is basically free.
That sounds
Other
great.
Classes you can check out on my friend Thomas Frank's productivity or habits building class. Yeah, Skillshare.com/notoverthinking. Have we talked about that enough now?
I feel like we have.
I feel like we've got our money's worth. Oh, they've got their money's worth.
And as a result, we will get our money's worth. All right. So, coronavirus. Let's, you're the doctor, you made some YouTube videos about this. What do we care about talking about this? My main exposure to what's going on is via Twitter. And I think, like with most things, I think I was slightly ahead of the curve, if you will, on this because,
curve and yeah. Flatten the curve and all that.
Yeah.
You were ahead of, God, I get it.
Yeah. So most of my Twitter feed is from people in the US, and it seems like, I think the US is still kind of behind a lot of other countries, but the UK is even further behind in terms of the spread of the virus and in terms of
what do you mean by behind?
Behind, but yeah, the virus started spreading more in the US before it started, really taking off in the UK. And then, and also like behind in the sense that like the discourse in the US, or at least in the Twitter sphere, the US
It's a very specific Twitter sphere, yeah.
Yeah, the sort of, New York / San Francisco Twitter discourse has been like, everyone don't leave your homes for a while. And, maybe like, I think like a week ago or something, maybe just under a week ago in California, there is actually like a state mandated, lockdown where you are not allowed to leave your house. And it seems like we're moving towards that in the UK. I think yesterday or something, Boris Johnson ordered every, pub, bar, restaurant and stuff to basically shut and only do takeaways, and only sort of essential stores like supermarkets are allowed to be open. So it seems like we're moving towards a shutdown. But yeah, I feel like I was drinking from the fire hose, a bit earlier than here in the UK. And so, yeah, basically my point is.
So that's why you've been isolating yourself for a longer time.
No. So actually, I've been isolating myself for maybe like 5 days now or something, 4 days.
Okay. That's reasonable. That's around the time everyone started isolating themselves.
Yeah. But I feel like I needed all the, I needed to be ahead of the curve to start like drinking from that fire hose, because my general response to things is like, people are overreacting. It's nothing. I'm not going to do anything about this. And so I think it was useful for me to have been hearing all of this stuff over the past few weeks, because now, a few days ago I was like, whoa, okay, we'd better start taking this seriously.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite concerning in the UK. Like, if you look on Brighton Beach, there are thousands of people on there just hanging out and having a good time. And it seems like a lot of the UK hasn't got the memo that actually, this social distancing stuff is important. And the graph of kind of exponential cases is looking quite scary in the UK. We were at like 4,000 cases yesterday. Today we're on 5,000. So like, 20% increase in one day.
And this is like confirmed cases. There's almost certainly like multiples of that are actually floating around.
Yes, quite.
So what's been your kind of, how is your sort of view of this whole situation evolved over the past few weeks? Because like we've been kind of hearing about, I remember we made some like joke about it on the podcast like a month ago or like 5 weeks ago or something.
That was when it was kind of just in China, and when people were like, oh, if you have returned from Wuhan and you have a cough, then go and get tested. Yeah.
So it was like not much of a thing back then in the rest of the world. But now obviously like it's the only thing that's going on anywhere.
Yeah. So I think it was about 2 weeks ago that I started to take this seriously. That was sort of the week that I made this video being like, right guys, I'm going to take this seriously now because I've kind of been ignoring it. And here's a lowdown of what's been going on. And kind of in doing the research for that video, that was when I really started to appreciate that, this could be a big deal. I think even then, like, in hindsight, we all probably should have been panicking a lot earlier.
Not panicking, but
Yeah, but you know what I mean, as in like really caring very hard about it, possibly even to the point of panic, because panicking gets a bad rep, but panicking in the right sort of way early on is preferable to kind of being blasé about it. So kind of I haven't rewatched that video that I made 2 weeks ago, but if I were to, I imagine I would be like, oh wow, I really had no idea what was coming. And I imagine I feel like things are going to get very, very, very bad. And so in a month's time, looking back on that video, looking back on this podcast, we probably still don't really have an appreciation of how bad things are going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like the classic problem of trying to get people to care about something before something really bad happens that forces them to care about it. Because, you can kind of read statistics and things, and you can sort of, read some of these papers that are saying like, this is how it's going to grow and stuff. And it still doesn't feel that real, but you need to somehow internalize the sort of intellectual aspect of what's going on.
Yeah.
Before like a loved one dies, for you to realize, oh wow, okay, we better do something.
This is a big deal. I think it's sort of like, people are sort of saying that this is kind of the worst catastrophe to happen since World War II. But like in World War II, you literally see your mates going out to war. You see the conscription people coming along. You see the bombs and the Blitz. Like it's a different sort of vibe when you can see what's going on in front of you.
Yeah.
Whereas this is very much we're watching the media and sort of intellectually being like, oh, hang on. So far, 233 people in the UK have died. Okay, I guess that's quite a lot. Okay, cool. And there's no real way of appreciating what those figures actually mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just as a very slight tangent, I've always had a hard time appreciating death toll figures, because I think maybe we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like I'm now starting to calibrate my compass for like what is a significant number of people dying in like an event or something. But I don't know. I think just from a very young age, I always assumed that like there's just tons of people dying for all sorts of, you know, all sorts of reasons, preventable and not. And so like, you know, then when occasionally you hear on the news that like, oh, like two Britons were in a car crash on a holiday in Spain and died or something. Like my reaction is like, okay, all right. Like, you know, and so like there's different scales of like people dying that seems to count. Like I feel like in the UK, if you're watching the media or something, a very small number of people dying will be a big deal.
Oh, as long as they're Britons dying, then it's a big deal. Otherwise, it's like, you know, Predator missile killed like 65 school children in northern Pakistan. All right, you know, 2 seconds. Whereas one Briton fell off a cliff in this diving holiday. Yeah, it becomes a big deal. Do you want what? I don't have the scissors. No, sorry about that. That was Molly asking for the scissors. There's a really good article that I read. I think I might have mentioned it on a pod a few weeks ago. It's called On Caring. At a website, mindingourway.com. And this is, it's all about like scope insensitivity. So like I used to think that, you know, when you do that thing of imagining, okay, imagine that every day, like, you know, it's a reality that let's say 10,000 kids in Africa are going to die of hunger or malaria or something like that. You know, I honestly couldn't care less that 10,000 people are dying in Africa of malaria and hunger and stuff. And so I thought that made me particularly sociopathic or particularly non-sensitive and all that stuff, that I just like really like emotionally, intellectually, I suppose intellectually I did, but like emotionally it didn't make me feel anything inside.
Yeah.
But then this article really puts that feeling into words. So for example, his first paragraph is, I'm not very good at feeling the size of large numbers. Once you start tossing around numbers larger than 1,000, or maybe even 100, you're a good tosser, the numbers just seem big. Consider Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. If you told me that Sirius is as big as 1,000,000 Earths, I would feel that's a lot of Earths. If instead you told me you could fit 1,000,000,000 Earths inside Sirius, I would still just feel like that's a lot of Earths. The feelings are almost identical. In context, my brain grudgingly admits that 1 billion is a lot larger than 1,000,000, and puts forth a token effort to feel like 1 billion Earth-sized star is bigger than 1,000,000 Earth-sized star. But out of context, if I wasn't anchored at 1,000,000, when I heard 1 billion, both of those numbers just feel vaguely large. And he goes on to say that, for example, billions of people live in squalor, with hundreds of millions of them deprived of basic needs and or dying from disease. And though most of them are out of my sight, I still care about them. The loss of a human life with all its joys and sorrows is tragic no matter what the cause, and the tragedy is not reduced simply because I was far away, or because I did not know of it, or because I did not know how to help, or because I was not personally responsible. Knowing this, I care about every single individual on the planet. The problem is my brain is simply incapable of taking the amount of caring I feel for a single person and scaling it up 1 billion times. I lack the internal capacity to feel that much. My kerometer simply doesn't go that far, and this is a problem. And so, and then he kind of goes on to talk about how, because of scope insensitivity, we all are sort of massively undergive stuff to charity that will save multiples of people rather than single individuals, because we feel like, oh, I don't care twice as much that 2 people are dead compared to when 1 person is dead. I certainly don't care 1,000 times as much if 1,000 people die versus 1 person dies. Therefore, I guess, you know, someone's going to sort this problem out. And kind of reading this whole article, we'll link it in the show notes. It just made me feel like, oh, damn, you know, the answer is to do the right thing anyway, even when your internal kerometer doesn't stretch as far to actually appreciate the size of death.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I think, yeah, I've actually had very similar experiences, for many years, where I've always felt like, I don't really care about all this stuff, that I must be like insensitive or like, you know, something like that. And it was actually, I was having dinner with a few friends, maybe like 2 weeks ago, maybe somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks ago. And this was, I mean, yeah, it was still early days for like the corona. I think people were starting to worry about it in the UK. So obviously the topic of coronavirus came up at this dinner, and we were kind of talking about it. And then I was, you know, trying to gauge like, oh, you know, are you guys worried? That kind of thing. And at one point, one of my friends, so there were 4 of us at dinner, and one of my friends said something along the line. Oh yeah, he works in trading or something, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, it's like the markets are going crazy or something." He basically insinuated that his company was making good money off of the volatility in the markets, and then he said something like, "But obviously it's a big tragedy and it's really sad what's going on." And then I was like, right, okay, let me stop you right there. What do you mean? And then we were trying to judge, like, okay, how much do you actually, like, care? Okay, so he said that it's a tragedy. And I was like, well, okay, why is it like sad or whatever? And he was like, well, I mean, it's obvious, right? Like, people are dying, right? And I was like, yeah, but like, do you actually care about that? And then we were trying to figure out, like, how much do you care about it? And then we were trying to figure out, like, who is the most distant person to you that would have to die for you to be sad about it? You know? And I've actually made notes from this whole dinner in Rome. So let me just bring up my notes.
Oh, you started using Rome?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yes.
Okay. So should I start using it?
Yeah. It's just like an absolute no-brainer compared to like Notion, Evernote, and things like that. But again, like my bottleneck is just me not using it regularly enough. All right, let me find.
How's the quick capture on it?
They've recently made like a mobile web version, which is all right.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god, this was ages ago. March 4th. This was 2 and a bit weeks ago. Okay, conversation topics: TikTok, someone's trip to somewhere, and coronavirus. Okay, and then. So this, my friend said, we shouldn't forget that it's actually a very sad thing because lots of people are dying. In my notes I've written, I started trying to understand what he meant, whether he actually felt sad. The next bullet point is, tried to figure out the most distant person we'd still feel something for if we found out that someone, okay. All right. We're going on a massive digression here, but I think this is worth it. So this is, just to kind of bring us back to how we got here. This is about the kerometer and like, how much can we actually care for people that, we don't actually know? And so the thought experiment we had was, who is the most distant person to you that you still feel something for if you found out that someone they loved was terminally ill? So it's not like this person, it's not like the person is terminally ill or dead. It's that someone that they love. So your friend, a loved one of your friend or a loved one of your family member or a loved one of your, acquaintance is terminally ill. How distant does that acquaintance have to be for you to still care about it?
And wait, so how are you defining care about it? Because I'm getting a bit concerned.
So then we kind of got into this, and one of my friends proposed that there are different kinds of sad that you feel. There's like first-hand sadness, and then there's like a second-hand sadness where you feel sad for someone else. So for example, if you found out that your friend's mum had died, let's say you don't know your friend's mum at all, you'd still probably feel pretty sad because your friend is pretty sad. And what was proposed was that that's a different kind of sadness to if your own mum had died, for example.
Okay.
So that was one way we were trying to like understand this idea of caring. And I think that kind of makes sense. So I was really, cause like basically there were 3 other people at this dinner. One of the guys is like I feel like he doesn't say things without thinking. The other 2 were giving a lot of lip service to like caring about stuff. And so I was trying to understand like how much they actually care. And I think I asked questions like, okay, if you find out that like 10 people died of coronavirus in Spain last week, how much do you actually care about it? Is it like if the waiter gets your order wrong just now? Like which of those 2 do you care about more? And then we never got to any good answers because I think there's just different kinds of caring. I don't know.
Yeah. It's also one of those things that I guess people wouldn't really want to admit. Like, honestly, in that circumstance, I would care more about my order being wrong or my octopus sashimi not tasting very nice than the fact that 10 randomers died in Spain.
Okay, no. Okay, so you say that, but if I offer you 2 options, I said, hey, Ollie, you can either get the right order or 10 people will die in Spain.
Oh, then yeah, obviously. I'd obviously pick the tuna sashimi.
No, so like it's hard, it really is hard to say like what do you if someone says they care.
What do you mean by care? Yeah, because is it okay? So if I would rather this thing didn't happen. Sure, I would much rather that 10 people stayed alive in Spain rather than me get my octopus sashimi right.
Yeah,
but like whether it emotionally affects me is
it's maybe almost certainly the octopus sashimi emotionally affects you more than.
Oh God, yeah.
But that's just because of you and octopuses. But we won't go there.
That's a bit of a rogue joke to make.
So I think the kerometer is an interesting thing, and I mean, so do you believe your kerometer is like calibrated pretty standardly? Like you're not like significantly below average on the caring spectrum.
I think overall I probably am below average on the caring spectrum, just because sort of comparing myself against. It's hard to say. I suppose in terms of kind of day-to-day things that happen, I tend not to care about most things. Like, if someone overtook me on the road, I wouldn't care, whereas someone else might fly into some kind of road rage if someone overtook them on the road. And, if something...
No, that's a different kerometer.
Yeah.
That's
so, all right. So,
let's talk about the kerometer of like,
mean?
I guess you see something on the news and it actually affects you, like emotionally.
No, honestly, I think mine is pretty average compared to most people.
Okay.
On that note, actually, so I was in a podcast recording with these two dudes who were involved in the effective altruism stuff because they seen my video where I talked about taking the 10% pledge, about giving 10% of my income to charity every year to save lives and blah, blah, blah. And I asked them kind of like at the end of this, they were like, have you got any questions for us? And I was like, yeah, guys, I'm curious as to... Because, for example, our friend Lucia, who's big into effective altruism, her whole thing is that the suffering of others like genuinely emotionally affects her, and that sort of drives her to do this like amazing volunteer charity work. Whereas for me, it's like the suffering of others does not at all emotionally affect me unless it's something I can see or unless it's a very moving story, usually for one person. But like something on the media tends not to affect me. But I just sort of know rationally that it's the right thing to do to, give some money away to help people survive, essentially.
Yeah.
And I asked these guys, given that these guys were involved in effective altruism, what end of the spectrum were they? And they were very much kind of my end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So that made me feel really happy. I was like, oh, good. That doesn't mean I'm an outlier. It means Lucia's the outlier. She's the weird one.
Yeah, I think Lucia's definitely an outlier.
So yeah, overall, I think my own kerometer is pretty average. And this article, like on caring, made me kind of appreciate that even more, that actually... scope insensitivity in humans is a thing, and my tiny brain cannot cannot fathom 1,000 lives dying compared to one life dying.
Yeah.
How do we get onto this? We're talking about the main conundrum is this thing of like, how seriously do you take something that you can't see?
Yeah, and the reason it's worth talking about that is because I think the goal should be to try and like figure out how you can make yourself care about these like invisible sort of almost intellectual things before they become more than that, Yeah.
It's sort of like the environment in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, I find it very, very difficult to quote care about the environment.
Yeah.
Like I know intellectually that the environment is an important thing to maintain and bloody, bloody, blah, but it just does not emotionally affect me to any degree at all. But people sometimes say that, I went to the Gulf of Mexico or whatever, where I saw the oil spill and I saw birds dead with oil like in their intestines or something. And then I realized, oh crap, this oil thing is a big deal.
Yeah.
Perhaps it takes kind of seeing something firsthand like that. Or like how kind of intellectually I know that kind of battery farming for chickens and cows and stuff is probably a bad thing. But I haven't seen like Cowspiracy or any of these kind of documentaries where people say that this documentary had a huge impact on my life.
Yeah.
So maybe it is something about kind of visually seeing it in a way that makes you care about it, either through a story form or something like just like something really moving, or through, for example, someone very close to you dying, for example.
Yeah. So one of my Twitter friends, he claimed yesterday that there is. Do you know Peter Attia, Ali? He has a podcast.
Oh yeah, Peter Attia.
Peter Attia has
show a few times.
He's gone and done a podcast about a podcast episode about the coronavirus. And my Twitter friend Ryan claimed that the first 30 minutes of that podcast episode should, actually, Ryan reckons that if everyone listens to the first 30 minutes of this, it will actually get your heart in the right place, not just your mind when it comes to like this thing. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, which episode is this? I'm looking at his
it
podcast.
is
99, Peter Hotez, continuing the conversation on coronavirus.
Yeah, 99, continuing the conversation on coronavirus. I think that's
maybe not. Yeah, it seems like the last 3 he's done have been on coronavirus. I need to start listening to this podcast more. This particular one. Peter Hotez seems like a cool dude.
Yeah. So you said that like your heart was in it about 2 weeks ago after you made that YouTube video.
Yeah, after I kind of started to research him.
So what was like, what did you find out in this research? Like, give us like the TLDR of like your YouTube video, and then like help me understand like what it was that made you start emotionally caring about this.
I think emotionally caring about it is still a strong word.
Oh, okay.
Hang on. Yeah, I think sort of when I was making this video, I still kind of thought of it intellectually, because I guess the attitude that I had when I was making this video is that, okay, this is a virus. This is a pretty big deal. It's killing a lot of people, bloody blah. But I didn't quite appreciate at the time kind of the exponential rate of increase in places like the UK. I didn't quite appreciate because at the time we didn't have the data from Italy to show just how bad things would get. And I think it was really when doctors in Italy started weighing in on like, oh my God, like you can't believe what's going on in Italy. This is absolutely mental. That was when I started properly taking it seriously, because Italy feels a lot like the UK, whereas Wuhan in China does not feel at all like the UK.
Yeah.
And so when it was in Wuhan in China, I was like, okay, cool, fine. And then the Chinese people were doing all their like quarantining and stuff, and it seemed to be working. Okay, fine. It's like it still feels very, very other. But when it's happening in Italy, which is basically across the doorstep, and doctors are saying that, you know, our intensive care is completely full, we've run out of masks, like, you know, people are dying on like right, left and center because we physically don't have enough ventilators and stuff. That was when I was like, oh crap, you know, this sort of appreciating what would happen if that were to happen in the UK.
Yeah.
Because I guess 2 weeks ago when I was making this video, I thought, oh, well, you know, at the time, 163 people had it in the UK. And I was thinking, okay, well, I mean, the NHS objectively is pretty good. We have a lot of intensive care beds. We have a lot of ventilators. If necessary, I mean, it's better to catch it in the UK than it is to have it in Pakistan, where, you know, there's basically, they don't have any of these kind of healthcare systems stuff going on. So yeah, it was hearing other stories of doctors and their kind of perspective on the ground that was like, oh crap, this is kind of a big deal.
Ah, okay. And so like, what did you start doing after like 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago? Like how did your actions actually like change?
My actions didn't really change too much up until, as in, you know, up until the government started advising people to socially distance, which I think kind of makes sense, because I was interviewing a respiratory consultant yesterday, editing the video for it today on my live stream actually, and he was saying that, look, you know, every country's response to this kind of changes depending on what stage of the epidemic or the pandemic we're at. So at the moment we're at a stage in the UK where social isolation is important. You know, 2 weeks ago, it was still a case of, okay, well, if you've been to these regions, then it's probably problematic. Like 2 weeks ago, I was going on a ski trip to France, and a few of us were like, is this a good idea? But then we were like, well, I mean, France doesn't have that many cases. Chances are we're not going to get infected. But, you know, whereas just like a week later, we wouldn't even consider like flying to a ski resort, especially now that all these ski resorts are closed. So like, it feels like as exponential increases, are prone to do, it feels like everything is happening all at once. Whereas at the start, it was a very slow that, oh, you know, we should probably care about this coronavirus thing. And then immediately it was like, oh crap, actually, we should stop travel to everywhere, every country in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole exponential thing is very slow and then very fast.
Isn't that like one of Einstein's famous quotes or something? Like the fundamental error of man is the inability to understand the exponential function.
Yeah. Someone says something like that.
And people say that in context with of like compound interest and stuff. And like, don't appreciate that 2 to the power of 8 is so huge. Yeah. 10 to the power of 8 rather, yeah. Yeah,
we've actually built a nice little causal model to simulate the spread of the disease.
Oh, hang on. Molly's saying something. Yes, Molly. Oh, okay, we need to pause podcast. We need to help Molly put stuff in the car.
All right.
So don't say anything, because then we can cut out the silence. Right, we've got 2 minutes until stuff needs to be put in the car. So, where were we going with this discussion?
So yeah, you said that like 2 weeks ago you started caring about this stuff because of what you heard. From your research, you saw that bad stuff was happening in Italy, and that was like, whoa, the same thing could happen to us pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that even now, so like earlier today, I was had a cheeky sort of 8-way Zoom call with some of my other medic friends, and like Paul in Singapore was talking about how kind of what the Singaporean government is doing and their kind of health system's response to it. You know, we've got friends who are in hospitals in London where all of the intensive care beds have run out, and they're trying to convert like 30 extra beds into intensive care units. And like, that's a big deal because a big hospital will have like 10 beds in intensive care. And to add another 30 on top of that is like a huge undertaking. And as the sort of death toll is increasing, and as we are genuinely starting to run out of masks and personal protective equipment, and the government is saying that, we're going to bring more of it in. We've also run out of reagents to actually run the tests. So now tests are having to be rationed, whereas a lot of people in the healthcare world are saying that actually, you know, surely you should be testing healthcare professionals rather than just telling them to self-isolate for 14 days because, you know, there's some hospitals in London that are just assuming that half of the workforce is going to be off sick at any one time. And that's what their modeling is kind of based around because of all the self-isolation that's going to happen. So I think the more I hear from people on the ground in real life who are actually being impacted by it, the more real it seems. Because even in my hospital, like as of Friday, like 2 days ago, we didn't have a single confirmed case, and we had all these preparations. Like we'd set up the wards, the COVID-19 wards. We'd, you know, rearrange the tables in the cafeteria so that tables were more far apart. But it's just, apart from those preparations going on, you just don't appreciate what kind of could happen until you start hearing stories from people that you know about how big a deal it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it's very, very realistic that, you know, the whole country is going to end up in lockdown. We're going to be stuck in our houses, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, there's going to be police blockades on the roads, and yeah,
it definitely seems like we're heading in that direction. And yeah, I mean, other countries have started actually locking down and things. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to happen in the UK. I think the thing that really helped me, so I wasn't really taking this seriously. Okay, so actually, like, maybe from like 4 to 6 weeks ago, my co-founder's girlfriend, who lives with us in London, she started like stockpiling food and stuff like that. Like, we have like 50 liters of water in our cupboard. We have like tons of pasta. She started like stockpiling food and supplies like 6 weeks ago, and we were like laughing at her. We thought she was crazy. Like, she's Russian, and so like we were trying to get to the bottom of like why is she taking this so much more seriously than we are. And I think our main conclusion was that, like, growing up in Russia, the level, I guess, like, you know, growing up in the UK, your default assumption is that everything will be fine and like nothing can really hurt you, and like things have to get pretty bad before you're like, whoa, what if everything's not fine? What if I can get hurt? You know, some serious shit has to go down for you to feel that way. And we kind of concluded that, like, growing up in Russia, the sort of threshold, the threshold for feeling immortal is a lot lower. Right. So as I was saying, 6 weeks ago, I definitely wasn't taking this seriously. I think maybe like 2 and a bit weeks ago, maybe around 2 weeks ago, Lucas read a blog post. There was a Medium post that was doing the rounds. This was where the whole flatten the curve verbiage was coined. Is that what does verbiage mean?
I have no idea.
Let's look it up.
Verbiage. Fine.
Did I use that one right? No, I didn't.
Excessively lengthy or technical speech.
Or writing. Okay.
Oh no, the way in which something is expressed. It's like the US
wording
thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So that's when
we need to look at how the rule should be applied based on the verbiage.
Yeah. So, you might have heard this term, like, we need to flatten the curve. And that was kind of, I think, coined by, it doesn't matter who coined it. I don't want to make any false claims here. But basically, there was a blog post that was doing the rounds, on the internet, on the computer. And, Barack Obama tweeted this thing out, like, you know, everyone was like tweeting this thing. And Lucas, my housemate / co-founder, he read this post and then was like, whoa, okay, we're shutting this place down. And, I think that kind of made him start taking it seriously. I haven't actually read the post myself. Did you read that one, Ali? The Medium post in your research?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you give us a TLDR of that one?
Well, of the flatten the curve thing.
Yeah. Of the post, like the Medium post.
Oh, I can't remember. It was ages ago.
Okay.
Like, so you're familiar with the flatten the curve verbiage?
I'm familiar with all of this. Just explain it for our listeners.
Okay. So basically the idea of flatten the curve is, essentially, if you imagine, how do we explain this? So basically when a pandemic or epidemic is happening, lots of people are going to get infected. the more people that get infected, the quicker the disease runs through the population, essentially, and the quicker the disease dies out. The problem is that if too many people get infected and too many people require intensive care beds, at some point you get to a level where there are physically not enough beds. Like, you are physically beyond the capacity of the entire country's healthcare system. And if the number of cases requiring hospitalization exceeds the number of hospital beds you have available, at that point, doctors have to start making decisions about who lives and who dies, and who gets given a bed and who gets turned away at the door. That's not a place you want to be. The idea of flattening the curve is the idea that if you manage to spread the pandemic out over a long period of time, yes, it lasts longer, but every day fewer people are affected than would be if everyone got infected at once. And therefore, over time, the same number of people gets affected, but actually your healthcare system has enough capacity to cope with it. And so if you imagine a graph, like the graph that's been going around is sort of, you imagine a sort of big kind of N-shaped graph that goes up very high, and then a flatter version of it was you squash the N down such that it's more of a hill.
It's commonly called a bell curve.
Fine. Bell curve. N-shaped curve, fine. Bell curve. But it becomes a lot more shallow, more like a hill rather than a mountain.
Yeah, so basically you're trying to minimize the number of people that are infected simultaneously. Because when lots of people are infected simultaneously, you have to do something about it. And maybe your hospital healthcare system doesn't have enough capacity when there are too many people. So that's what this whole like flattening the curve thing is about, if you've heard that terminology. So yeah, Lucas read this thing, then he started taking it seriously. I still wasn't taking it seriously at this point. This was like 2 weeks ago, I think. For example, I went to the gym a couple of times after that. And one of our sort of friends who lives in the same building as us, he managed to, this was after all the hand sanitizers had run out everywhere. He managed to procure a bunch of hand sanitizers for a very high price, and he was giving them out to people on our floor. And so we managed to acquire some hand sanitizers. And then I started using that. And to be honest, I hate to say this, but I think the thing that made me start taking it seriously was just that, like, lots of other people who I sort of think are reasonable and who I trust, they started taking it seriously. Like people on Twitter who I follow, who I see as like, these guys are incredible thinkers, and, you know, and I see them as like reasonable people that, like, they wouldn't overreact to things in general. They wouldn't, like, you know, when these guys who I see as like very, very thoughtful and measured kind of people, when they start saying, guys, everyone should stay home, then I was basically like, whoa, okay, all right, Michael Nielsen, I'm sold. So I think, yeah, it was basically the social aspect, or the mimetic aspect, maybe, that kind of made me start taking it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like, once your tribe starts taking something seriously, then you will start taking it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was difficult for me because, like, I think it's the same for you. Like, you know, you and I, we don't watch the news and stuff. My general, you know, feeling is that people are always going to be making a big deal out of whatever's going on. Like, there's just a lot of noise. And, like, if I believed every time, you know, it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? The media is always crying wolf. I cannot sit there and, like, take it seriously every single time. So I guess I kind of rely on trusted third parties, aka my tribe, to do the vetting for me. A lot of
I mean, I think that's a reasonable way of thinking about it, to be honest, because it's sort of that rationale for not caring about the news, and that most of the time it's noise rather than signal. Yeah. And if something serious is happening, then you will hear about it through other means rather than watching the news. Yeah. Like, even now, like, I can't, like, I've seen like 2 clips from BBC News, and I sort of think that, it'd be kind of nice to have a TV with the news playing, just so I can have more of a finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Oh, dude, just have Twitter open. Twitter is absolutely incredible. Like, it is actually such a great time for Twitter. Like, everyone is united. Like, my whole feed is just like coronavirus tweets.
Oh, I mean, yeah, same.
And then, like, you know, the ensuing memes and like the jokes, and like, it's actually like, you know, aside, if we just put to one side the fact that this is a terrible tragedy, it's kind of nice to have everyone kind of banding together. You know, like, I feel, you know, yeah, on paper, like, I'm stuck in quarantine or whatever. I'm not leaving the house and stuff.
But you've got all these comrades over the internet.
Yeah, but there's all these comrades over the internet. Like, everyone, you know, everyone on Twitter is just like, you talking about the same thing. Like all of my friends are in the same position, or it's like, working from home, stuck at home kind of thing. And so it doesn't feel, honestly, it feels kind of nice. And I read this very good, piece by a guy whose, blog post I've recommended before on this podcast, a guy called Morgan Housel. It's a piece called Common Enemies. And he basically talks about I'll read some excerpts out. The post begins, everyone wants a map, just a simple guide to what's going to happen next. In search of a map, it's become common to try to match our current situation to past crises. Is this like 2008, the global financial crisis? Is this similar to 9/11? Is this like the 1918 flu pandemic? Or maybe the Great Depression? And he says none of those fit today's ordeal. Today's halt in economic activity is worse than 2008. The enemy is more invisible than 9/11. Our medical knowledge far exceeds that of 1918. Policy response is now faster and deeper than in the Great Depression. None of these events offer a map of what might happen to us next. Few historic events ever do. Big events grow big because they're complex, and complexity never repeats itself in its exact form. But as Voltaire said, history never repeats itself. Man always does. And so he basically thinks that World War II is an accurate historical map for the cultural kind of impact of the coronavirus. And he says that, the World War II is the right comparison, not the battle or the geopolitics, but World War II united most of the world against a common enemy in a way that's incredibly rare. Cooperation within and between countries surged. And he says the fight against COVID-19 is nearly identical in that respect. This may be the first time since the 1940s that so much of the world is united so firmly against such a specific foe. And he says that what unity did to people's behaviors, their abilities, their outlooks, their incentives, surprised many during World War II. And if history is any guide, we're about to be surprised again. And I won't read out the whole article, but essentially, he was saying that the vibe in the US, when it was announced that the country is going to war, was a very special, particular thing. But in World War II, the government basically, increased taxes significantly on basically everyone. And Franklin Roosevelt said in a speech, he said, are you a businessman or do you own stock in a business corporation? Well, your profits are going to be cut down to a reasonably low level by taxation. Indeed, in these days when every available dollar should go to the war effort, I do not think that any American citizen should have a net income in excess of $25,000 per year after payment of taxes. Morgan, the writer, says that the most amazing part about all of this is that Americans were actually okay with that. And it kind of, it brought the country together. And he also talks about the UK during the Blitz. People had to literally go into underground bomb shelters because the city was being bombed. And in those kinds of conditions, you'd expect there to be a significant rise in things like mental health illnesses and depression and suicide and all this kind of stuff. But by all reasonable estimates, most of, the numbers for all these things actually dropped because there was something about, this thing, the Blitz, the war that brought people together that, emergency services in London reported an average of only 2 cases of bomb neuroses a week. Psychiatrists watched in puzzlement as long-standing patients saw their symptoms subside during the period of intense air raids. And apparently, in these bomb shelters, the conduct was so good that volunteers never even had to summon the police to kind of maintain order within these bomb shelters. If anything, the crowd policed themselves according to unwritten rules that made life bearable for complete strangers, jammed shoulder to shoulder on floors that were at times awash in urine. Basically, the long and short of it is the war kind of brought people together in a very special way that doesn't happen very often. And that's not to say that this is a silver calling this as a silver lining is a bit far, he says. But he says, I wonder if we'll look back at COVID-19 as one of the worst things to happen to us, yet triggering something positive that couldn't be achieved in any other way. We'll link the post, but I have actually felt this myself of a feeling of camaraderie and we're all in this together. And, I very rarely act. I'm very rarely, I don't really care about stuff like the environment too much because I feel like I'd be playing a very small part in a very big machine and it's not really worth it. It's very rare that I actually end up getting on board with playing a small part in a big machine. And I definitely feel on board in this, and it feels, something about it feels nice, you know?
Yeah, so me and some other doctor colleagues were having a similar discussion. Because in all the hospitals, like all of the routine things have been cancelled. Like there are no elective theatre operations or people waiting for hip replacements and, you know, like non-life-threatening operations. All of that's been cancelled. And we were all surprised as to how okay everyone is with this. Like in a way, people were almost glad that their surgery had been cancelled because they knew that it was in aid of the war effort.
Yeah.
And so there's this real sort of interesting sense of sort of where everyone is viewing the doctors, the healthcare professionals as the good guys. And you've got all these kind of companies now being like, you know, Starbucks offering free coffee and McDonald's offering free food, and like all these retailers and restaurants and stuff saying, if you work for the emergency services, we'll give you 50% off everything. We'll give you free coffees. And it seems like, and so the cynical way of looking at it, one of them was saying was that, well, like at the moment, the public is on the doctor's side. But in 6 months' time, as this progresses, as, you know, the waiting lists get further and further behind for people having these non-life-threatening, but still like really, you know, troublesome things like hip replacements and, you know, a vulval surgery and all this sort of stuff, as that starts to fray on people's emotions and the tempers and stuff, then the vibe towards the doctors and the healthcare professionals might change. But at the moment, it feels like a very, like, it does feel like a genuinely nice time to be at work. Like, I am much more excited to go to work these days than I've ever been before. And I think the main reason is because of the camaraderie that you get amongst everyone.
Yeah. Wait, what are you actually doing at work? Are you doing like coronavirus stuff?
No, so I'm on my obstetrics and gynecology placement.
So you're doing the usual stuff?
I'm doing the usual stuff, except that there's a bit less of it because all the routine stuff's been cancelled.
Yeah.
But they are keeping us on the same rotations where we were all, like all the foundation doctors in the country were due to rotate to new placements on April the 1st.
Yeah.
But now they're saying that everyone's going to kind of basically stay where they are because they don't want to have that sort of period of a few weeks of destabilization, which inevitably happens whenever doctors en masse move to different rotations.
Right.
But they're also saying, so I'm going to be staying on obstetrics and gynecology, but the idea is that, you know, when called upon, I will have to sort of scrub into the COVID-19 war effort.
Yeah.
And perhaps go to A&E or perhaps go to one of the general medical wards.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Schools have been cancelled, universities, exams. It's all very interesting.
Yeah, it must be an interesting time to be at university because it's like my Twitter feed, but in real life.
Why is it like a Twitter feed, but in real life?
I mean, you know, just lots of people like interacting in
yeah. I mean, everyone's gone home now, so
yeah. But like, that must have been an interesting time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always think that like it's definitely a very interesting and crazy time, and there's definitely a sense that like we're living through history right now, and that this will be something in the history books, you know, a few decades from now. But it doesn't feel like I thought it would feel, you know, because like when you learn about like the war and stuff, and you learn about all these like historical events, it seems so like, I don't know, you just feel like it seems like it was like a huge shock to the system. And like, obviously the war was a huge shock to the system, but like, I don't know, actually, yeah, maybe this is a special case of me because like I work from home anyway. So like my life hasn't, radically changed or anything, but yeah, it's weird that we'll kind of look back on this as like this mad thing, but I don't know, it doesn't feel for me personally, my life doesn't feel that different, I guess. Does yours feel different?
It does, in the sense that we're taking the social distancing thing very seriously.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's like the main thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I wasn't really.
And it's like, you know, I didn't come home this weekend like actively because of social distancing.
Yeah.
It's a convenient reason.
You've been social distancing for years.
But now I've got a reason to do it.
Yeah, the other thought that I had was that it's like, I don't know, something about the whole situation has like exposed how fake everything is. Like, it's almost as if like normal life is this ridiculous theater where everyone like has their role or whatever, and we're all like playing these parts in this bizarre little theater production. And then like the coronavirus happens and everyone's like, all right, guys, we're gonna take a break. take off your costumes. Like everyone, just like, you know, we're gonna forget about all that stuff for a while. And it's kind of like, yeah, a lot of people are like, saying that like how fake it makes lots of jobs seem. That like, you know, yeah, I guess I could work from home. Sure, it doesn't really change anything for me. Like, even if I wasn't doing this, like, what's actually going to happen if I'm not doing this job, kind of thing. And it's just kind of revealed, yeah, the fake theatrical aspect of sort of life, and yeah, I guess having this actual pressing need and, you know, actual issues going on that everyone has to solve. It's kind of put everything in perspective a bit. You have frozen for me now, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you've frozen for me as well, but you can still hear me, right? Oh, you're back.
I can still hear you.
Well, it's not my internet. It's definitely yours, mate. I've got my wired connection. No, I know what you mean. Like, I think... Wait, can you still hear me? Hello? Okay, you've completely gone now.
Yeah, you were complete. Did you say something just then?
I said, can you hear me? I said hello. Okay, it seems to be better.
I can't hear you.
Anyway, I feel like we should wrap this up anyway. We've been going for a very long time, and I feel we've just kind of been having a general chit chat about what's been going on. The way that this really kind of started to make sense for me was sort of thinking about what YouTube videos to make, and like now any YouTube video I make just seems completely trivial. I'm just like,
yeah.
Why does it matter? Like who actually cares? And because my whole plan for kind of from August was going to be to hashtag travel the world, and to, you know, like all of that is just obviously out of the window now. And it made me think, hang on, this is all just a game that we've been playing, and, you know, it doesn't actually matter. Who cares?
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm struggling with currently.
Yeah, you broke up through a lot of that, so I caught the general gist of it. But I think
cool. Yeah, it'll be recorded on my end, so you can
abruptly wrap this up.
Cool. So thanks for listening, people. See you later. Stay safe. Stay socially distant.
Yep. Please stay in your homes as far as possible. Don't meet people. And
that's it for this week. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Apple Podcasts website if you're not using an iPhone. There's a link in the show notes.
If you've got any thoughts on this episode or any ideas for new podcast topics, we'd love to get an audio message from you with your conundrum, question, or just anything that we could discuss.
Yeah, if you're up for having your voice played on the podcast and your question being the springboard for our discussion, email us an audio file MP3 or voice note to hi@notoverthinking.com.
If you've got thoughts but you'd rather not have your voice played publicly, that's fine as well. Tweet or DM us at @noverthinking on Twitter, please.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.